God has made it so. Some folks dance, others cry. We make our own paradise. God has made it so. Those are words of a song I wrote some days ago, or from some years ago. That song says that what we call mysterious tomorrow is actually what we have crafted. So today is a testament of how well you use your yesterday. Today is also your only chance for a better tomorrow. So today, I'm here to share with us on what I have tagged work habits that don't work. A lot of the times, believers pour in so much energy in coming to church, in being in church, in serving in church. But after church, nothing seems to happen. Because sometimes we have a wrong understanding of where we serve God. I like to say that a church is like a petrol station. You drive in to get fuel. And you don't get fuel just for getting sick. Fuel is supposed to be used to run. Fuel is supposed to be used to do work. And so every time in the presence of God is an opportunity to be refueled. But what you do after church is what actually defines how much you glorify God. The workplace, I dare to say, is where everything about our life runs and is decided. So, many a times, we have this sense that when we're in church is when we're serving God. But I say that every moment of your life is service to God. In church, out of church, and especially in the workplace. I have been very passionate about that term, work, by reason of my encounters and my understanding. And today, I'm here to share a little bit of that. I want to begin by saying that there are three kinds of workers in every workplace. I call them the type 1 worker, the type 2 worker, the type 3 worker. The type 1 worker, I call him the drifter. He's in the workplace to while away time. He's waiting. He's either waiting to go abroad, or he's waiting for Mr. Right, and today Mrs. Right, Miss Right, to sweep him or sweep her off her feet. Or he's waiting for civil service work. Or he's waiting for oil company, work in the oil company. The type 1 worker is in the workplace to pass time. He doesn't want to stay in the house. Type 2 worker, I call the type 2 worker a survivor. He's in the workplace to make ends meet. He's in the workplace to keep a roof over his head, a roof over her head. He's in the workplace to put food on the table. And because survival is all he's interested in is in that pay that comes. And by worker, I like to clarify that I refer to both the employee, the self-employed, the employer, the investor. So, the type 2 worker works to survive. And the type 3 worker, I call the type 3 worker the steward. The type 3 worker sees the workplace as the platform to live out his core, his purpose. Where do you belong? Why is it important to clarify where you belong? A lot of the problems in the workplace can be traced to these 3 types of workers. The type 1 worker is whiling away time, and so anything that requires his focus and concentration in the workplace irritates him. You put him through training and say, this is not my place. When I get to that place, I will shine. And he waits, and the years run by. The interesting thing is this. Though he's there, so a lot of the times, that dream doesn't come. Why doesn't it come? Because small opportunities qualify or disqualify us for the big opportunities. And so, he waits, and the years roll by, and nothing changes. Why doesn't anything change? Because he's not open to the opportunity to growth. We find businesses owned by type 1 workers. We find managers at the type 1. And woe betide an organization whose manager or owner is a type 1. And then the type 2 worker. Because he's interested in that pay, he will do whatever is required, as long as the pay will come. So you ask him to go for training, he will go. But the point is that he will never do beyond what that pay controls. And so yes, he will put a roof over his head. Yes, he will put a car on the road. There are people driving who are survivors. Yes, he may build a house. But when the roll call is done of people who have impacted society, when the roll call of world changers is being made, such people are never mentioned. Because all they are after is survival. Interestingly, the economy and the times that we live in today does not have room for survivors. Then we have the third group of workers, the stewards. The steward is in business because he cares. The steward is in business because he has a sense of responsibility. And because of that, he's interested in everything about the business. So the steward is the one that knows the secrets of the company. The steward is the one that everybody runs to when they have issues. The steward is the one the customer will rather queue up for. The steward is the one that backs their word again and again and again. And interestingly, he never sets out for their words. He sets out to be of service. He sets out to give value. I like to stay at this point that what we call money making has become so overrated, by my opinion. Because when money is your first consideration, your service stops where the money stops. And so we run after money. There was some time ago I did an audio book, I called it Money Skills. And in that book I said that those that chase money never seem to catch up. But those that chase value are more often than not overtaken by money. When I lived in Lagos some years ago, and I had just graduated from theater arts department. So I went to Lagos, and there was this place we used to gather if you needed jobs, in the acting business. We would gather there, all kinds of people would gather there. The producers would gather there, directors would gather there, the actors and actresses. It was an everyday thing. There was no particular place. We would just stroll around. I don't know anybody who has lived in Lagos that knew Woody's. Now, there was something I noticed when I used to go there. I noticed that there were people who didn't have to come there to get jobs. They got a phone call. Why? By reason of the value that they represented. Owners of movies would insist to the producer, if you don't have this guy, sponsors. If you don't have this person or the other person, I'm not giving you money. Yeah. So, value makers, value chasers, enjoy the largesse in every industry. And the rest struggle for the crumbs. Wow. So I ask you again, where do you belong? Are you a giver? Are you a survivor? Are you a steward? Because your tomorrow matters. Depends rather on where you belong today. Why does it so much matter? Because peace is critical. Some years ago, I sat under a teaching, and that teaching has really affected, a lot of things I chase. And that man said that your life is made up of 3 seasons: your morning season, your afternoon season, and your evening season. Your morning season is your learning years, your learning season. Your afternoon season is your earning years, and your evening season, he talks season, is your yearning years. But I, over time, have changed that. By my opinion, the way you experience your evening season depends on what you did with your morning season and your afternoon season. So for some people, the evening season is a soaring season, where what comes into you has nothing or little to do with your labor at that present time. And for others, their evening season is a yearning season. I remember a man I was in a vehicle, and a young man walked up to him and talked very harshly with him. "Get out of this place, old man." And he sat down there and began to lament. He said, "I don't blame you. I used to control 5 cars. By then, who were you to talk to me?" And all of that and all of that. That was somebody in his yearning season. What you do in the workplace today determines how you experience your evening season. Yeah. Your evening season is that time when you are not as energetic as you are now. That means you cannot afford to depend only on your labor. Your morning season. I walk into university, and when I got out of the university, I experienced this burning sensation every time I got back to school, University of Uyo. For years, I wondered what that was. But years later, I got to find out why. So when I see the students walk in and walk out and fiddle with the phone and all of that, and they have a lot of time on their hands, that's why they are on the social media all day, it's because they don't understand what's waiting. There are certain things you're supposed to pick up while in school that defines how you experience your afternoon season. I like to say, like I said in one of my books, I said you go to school to get 5 types of sense. The first one is general sense, common sense. We all refer to it. You get common sense from general education, basic education, primary school, secondary school. The next type of sense you need from school, I call it people sense, social intelligence. You need social intelligence to deal with yourself. You need social intelligence to deal with others. You need social intelligence to deal with God. I've come to find out that sometimes we have a lot of spiritual energy, but we have very little spiritual intelligence. And so you find people praying all day. And tomorrow you pray all day again and nothing has changed. Because you're not engaging spiritual intelligence. So you need people sense from school. The third kind of sense you need is what I call trade sense. You get that from technical education. Technical education, I like to say, is that education that gives you capacity to produce either a product or a service. Tertiary education that has not given you capacity to produce either a product or a service on your own is a fraud. With all due respect to the lecturers in the house. I lived in Lagos for 3 years. My certificate was in my box here in Akwa Ibom State. And I lived in Lagos with my daughter. I had to take care of me, take care of her. And I remember one of those times when I was relating with my cousins, they said, "You are a graduate now. Hey, you, any kind of work." Why? They saw me running a catering business. I was producing chin-chin and circulating it to the retailers. And they said, "No, you're bigger than this." And at some point, I was kind of swayed. So one of them gave me an address of a lady. Say, "Go to her, tell her that you're a graduate, just speak this your English. They will give you work." And I went. The lady met with me. You know how Lagos is, you have to cross over. I had to move like 2 local governments away. And eventually I met the lady at about 4 p.m. Now if you have lived in Lagos, you know what that means on the road. So I met with her and she said, I'll pay you 4,000. Now that was like years ago, so my daughter is 17 this year, she was like 3 then too. She said, "I'll pay you 4,000. I'm resume on Monday." Now before I got back to the house, it was 10 p.m. And if it wasn't for the fact that the daycare where I placed my daughter was owned and the lady was also living there, I don't know what would have happened to her. So I got back to the house and I began to think, I will be running like this every day for 4,000. And what I was making from that chin-chin was 3 times that at that time. Brothers and sisters, the proof that you have gone to school is not the certificate. It is your capacity to cope with life and meet your needs and solve your problems by your own means. So when you go to school, you're supposed to get from school skills. There are 2 kinds of skills you need. You need work skills. You need life skills. Work skills. I have had to create some names, some terminologies, because I can't find them in the textbooks. So work skills are in 4 categories. And the first one, general work skills. Basic life skills. Basic life skills, as the name implies, allows you to go through all of life. Capacity to speak the language of your environment, number skills, cognitive skills. Those are the things we get from our primary school. And then after basic life skills, you need general work skills. Like the name implies, it's general. That's what the receptionist uses to work. Everything the receptionist does, his boss can do. It's just that he doesn't have the time. So every PA works with general work skills. And then you go to the third one, technical work skills. That's what separates the mechanic from the teller. That is when you begin to call the shots in the marketplace, when you have technical work skills. Because at that time, what you're doing for your client, he or she cannot do for himself. So, technical work skills gives you relevance anywhere in the world. And finally, the fourth one, essential work skills. Like I said, these things are created. I call it essential because just like oxygen is essential to your life, these skills are essential to every kind of enterprise. It is with essential work skills that you manage and you lead. So, by the time you graduate from school, you're supposed to be armed with those five. And a lot of the times, what we come out with, you find a graduate at a fuel pump station. Something that, with your basic skills, you can handle. And so when I go to school and I see what we get from school, I cry. I studied biochemistry in university. I hope I don't have any of my professors around. Why don't I want them around? Because of what I'm going to say next. So I came out with biochemistry. And I cannot tell you what a biochemist does.
Hey! Wow!
I passed. I wrote my term papers. The one time I benefited from biochemistry is when I started running my catering school. Because biochemistry, it's all basically a study about how other factors, affects the body, how food affects you, how everything. So when I got into the food business, I decided that I wasn't just going to learn how to cook, teach people how to cook, but I was going to produce healthy meals. So because of that, that's when I started enjoying that biochemistry. I was able to look at ingredients, look at the backpack, look at the constituents of the different food packages we use, and decide what to take and what not to take. But when I went to theater arts, I spent 2 years in the theater arts department. In those 2 years, the things I got from the theater arts department, I still use them till today. I was taught how to write, I was taught how to produce, I was taught how to act. I was given skills that I didn't need to walk into somebody's office to use them to eat. One of those times in Moody's, I said, okay, let me go with my stories. So I went to two of my stories, and that guy looked at me. We live in a world where people buy who first. So this guy looked at me, he said, well, I will look at your stories. If it makes sense, I will call you. I went with those stories broke. I was at my last that particular day, hoping that I would get something. And then he said he would call me, and I went back, and he didn't call. And I remember crying that day in the house. After crying, I dried my eyes. I said, I will never cry again for this reason. And the next day, I sat and I started writing again. I was writing. I came up with a few other stories, and God directed me to someone who was running a children's program. I said, sir, take a look at my content. Would you like it? He looked at it. He said, it's okay. I'll give you something. That something he gave me was the feedback I needed, because he got me 13,000. That was them. And that was something. So I was like, all right, good. So I can do something with my writing. Praise the Lord. So, like I said, it matters. I was going to talk about pigs. That was why I brought up the 3 seasons of your life. Some of the things you need now, there are specific capacities you need to handle. But if you don't have that capacity, you can't get it. I speak to parents very much. I say the children's children, you're lovingly coddling. You need to pay attention to what they are getting from school, so that you don't pour out your resources. only to be disappointed. You need to check, are they getting what they need to get? Because when they get what they need to get, you will be fine. I go further. My focus today is to help someone translate from surviving to thriving. The company Apple was started with 2 workers, Steve Jobs and one other partner. In 10 years, Apple had grown from a workforce of 2 to 4,000. My question is, how many of our companies here have grown to that magnitude within that period? How come we don't have small industries become mega industries? Because we're contented with survival. I came here to tell you that survival is hurting us. Survival is hurting Africa. Survival is what keeps us slaves to the developed world. A steward is a steward because he's interested in collective sufficiency. And so everything he does in the workplace is not just for himself. A steward thinks of the collective good. And because he thinks of the collective good, he keeps rising. Some time ago in a class we were taught about ambition and vision. Both ambition and vision push men forward. But the difference between the two is that ambition is usually originated from the self. I want to be the best, I want to be the biggest, I want to be the first. And that's good, but not good enough. Why is it not good enough? Because when you get to become the first, and you get to become that best, most times you relax. I remember those days when we were taught that Mike Tyson's punch, one punch, is as heavy as a bag of cement. And the world celebrated Mike Tyson for a while, and then I particularly have this burning passion about the black man's stardom. I don't know whether you observe that we have very few black men who have risen to stardom and have stayed. I have a burden in my heart about that. For some time, a long time, I blamed colonization. Because actually, colonization made a lot of things from us. As slaves, all we think about is the moment. Survival. I once heard that the slaves were not allowed to read any other book except the Bible. And I thought about it for a long time. Why were they allowed to read the Bible? But because the Bible gives us hope. The Bible gives us joy. And I don't know, the Word of God has this euphoric quality that keeps you bubbling. However, if all you have is the bubble, you will stay at some point. So, I used to blame colonization. But over time, I've studied the culture of other lands. I've noticed that the Japanese, Koreans were also colonized. And they were not colonized by other people. This, I use Nigeria as an example. One state would go colonize people in another state and bring them as slaves to build their empires. So I asked myself, if these people could come out of colonization and stand where they are today, then we cannot continue to use colonization as an excuse. So, what are those things that have kept us small? Before I go into those things, I like to emphasize on one other difference between the steward and the survivor: care. The steward cares about the customer. The survivor cares about his money. Customers flock to where they are cared for. Customers would rather stand in a long queue and wait when they know that that person serving them has their interest at heart. So I like to say that care is a magic wand when it comes to greatness, when it comes to sufficiency. So there are work habits that keep us small. I want to share some of them. I start by saying that proficiency is your access to sufficiency. Sufficiency is your birthright. Sufficiency is your entitlement. But there are terms and conditions. Until you become proficient, you cannot enjoy sufficiency. Someone said today, he said that what does it take to be a millionaire? Is it not just to have 1 million? And I smiled. I said, it is that mindset that is making all these scammers get away with our money. We will have 1 million. From the moment you begin to spend, is it still 1 million? Then you spend some more, and you spend some more. The only dependable platform for sufficiency is the workplace. And then there are work habits that we do in the workplace, that we engage in the workplace, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, that has kept us small. For once on time, I'm going to run through the work habits before I dwell on each of them, because I don't know how much time I have. So, what's the first work habit? Number one. I titled them work habits that don't work for you. 1, you open without provision for sales. Number 1, you open without provision for sales. Both the self-employed and the employee is guilty. Number 2, you exploit your customer's weakness. Number 3, you drop formalities once the customer has come to stay. For those of us writing, I'll take that again. 1, you open without provision for sales. 2, you exploit your customer's weakness. 3, you drop formalities once the customer has come to stay. 4, you operate without daily destination. In other words, you don't have a number profile to what you do. 5, this one goes to employers. You pay salaries without recourse to output. 6, you run or you do business casually. You run or you do business casually. The next one, you put the container above the content. The next one, you run alone. And finally, you do it as convenient, but expect returns as required. I like to start with the first one. You open without provision to make sales. How many of us have gone to a place desperately in need of a particular product and you saw it, and the first thing the person asks you is, do you have change? In fact, some people are even kind enough to ask you if you have change. Some other people just say, no change.
God.
Change is a work tool. You use it to work. Just like the farmer needs a hoe. Just like the carpenter, you go to, in those days when we had those carpenters, you go to call the carpenter to come and fix something in the house. The first thing he will grab is his bag of tools. He cannot follow you without those tools. Any kind of business that is dealing with money, unless your customers are paying through electronic means, there must be change.
Then you must be changed. There must be change. I beg now.
Now, what is the thing that stops us from having change? One, you feel that you're doing the customer a favor. The truth is that you are not doing the customer a favor. The second thing that makes it for you not to have change is that you don't prepare ahead. You eat everything that comes in. And if you are eating everything that comes in, you won't have change. The third reason why the business doesn't have change is that you have no targets you're running with. I don't know whether you notice on the road that you will see this shop spring up. A lot of money is sunk into it. The floor is tiled. It looks beautiful. And 6 months down the line, it has shut down. Because when the owner opened, he did not put the costs into consideration. For example, you run a boutique, you sell shoes. You count, what is my rent? What is the money I used to buy? You count all the costs. And then you're supposed to sit down and say, okay, given this running cost, how much must I sell every day to meet up? As long as you don't have that kind of number background, you will open the office and sit down and wait for the customer. Today's business world, you don't wait for the customer. You go out to meet the customers. Because the customer that says, I like this your bag, I will come to your shop. How much is the bag? You say 5,000. I promise I'm coming on Monday. He leaves his house with that 5,000. As he's leaving the house, somebody has blocked him. Please, have you heard of this scheme that you can register and 5 people and 5,000 comes into 50,000 in 2 days? Have you heard? Even if he resists that one, he moves to the next. He says, do you know that you can buy data for 5,000 and you have so and so? What am I saying? I am saying that there are so many things on the line for that same 5,000. And so if you don't have a way of compelling your customer, you will lose. What is the thing that will make you compel your customer, your targets? I use the bank as a model in this case. How many banks do we see folding up? I studied in multi-level marketing schemes, Longreach particularly. Longreach runs with such high level of discipline. You have targets you must run with, and you have a deadline to meet those targets. Little wonder the business grows. You're supposed to do the same thing with that your crayfish. You're supposed to do the same thing with the hairdressing. Every kind of business that does not run with numbers on a daily basis will never do enough. And so that's why when you have numbers to run with, you will leave no excuse for a customer to walk in and walk out. So you will have change. Number 2, you exploit your customer's weakness. Have you noticed that Many times when you run in desperately into a shop and the customer sees that you're desperate, the price goes up. So you exploit the person you are supposed to help. And the truth about it is that the moment your customer discovers that you have exploited him or her, so you are penny wise, pound foolish. It's a work habit that has kept us on the floor. Third work habit that doesn't work, you drop formalities. In one of my books, 21 Rules of Steady Cash Flow, I said one of the rules of steady cash flow is that you must never become familiar with your customer. Familiarity has killed so many businesses. Now, every worker has two kinds of customers. The employee has his or her boss as their first customer, and then has the consumer of the product as the second customer. Any of these two customers that doesn't like you will fire you. Then, the employer also has his employees as his first customer. If your employees are not your customer, try leaving the workplace and let them tell the other person that comes in that this product is not okay. Will they come back? So as the owner of the business, your employees are your first customer. And then you have the consumers too. So a lot of people get this job at the first time and they dress sharply and go to work. After 3 months, one that used to resume by 7:30 now resumes 8, now resumes 8:30. The truth about it is that your customer notices the very moment your value has dropped. From the very moment your value drops, your customer begins to shop for your alternative. So as your value drops, your relevance drops. As your value drops, your relevance drops. And if you have that in mind, nothing will cause you to become. Another time you go to a place, I don't know whether you've experienced it, maybe it's your next door shop. And just because that person knows you, you expect you to wait, let him or her serve the other people. That's still that familiarity. It kills the business. And let me take this last one before I begin to round up. This one goes to employers. In this part of the world, once you have gotten a job and the employer says, okay, I'll pay you 15,000, I'll pay you 20,000, the salary is fixed. Whether work has come in or has not, the pay is expected. It is keeping our enterprise small. See, as long as that pay is expected, your employee has no commitment whether the business is bringing in or not. But when his pay is tied to his output, he no more works for you, he works for himself. He goes out of his way. Some time ago, I had this idea. I said, let me put it to work in my school. I said, okay, everybody that brings in a new pupil takes home 2,000 naira on the spot once that new pupil has registered. Do you know that my staff go to houses? They go to houses. They analyze the strengths in our school so well that I learn again from them. And so in our part of the world, we don't like places where target. I don't like marketing. I don't like marketing. You hear a lot of people say that. But I to say that that is what is keeping our businesses small. Now, for us who are working, with these points I have enumerated, I'd like us to look at that place we are working and ask ourselves, does this place have a future? Now, if you are in a position to change things, please go ahead and change things. But if you are not in a position for it, maybe you work with management that is not open to these ideas, it is your responsibility to begin to either get other streams of income or something. As I round up, I like to say that hustling is good, but hustling cannot take the weight of your tomorrow's need. What do I mean by hustling? Doing whatever comes as long as it puts food on the table. But when you have something you are doing and you stay on it, to enjoy comfort in life today, you have to do something long enough and well enough to stand out. Long enough and well enough. And two things will help you to get out of hustling. One of them is vocational alignment, and the second is stewardship. Vocational alignment, stepping into that thing you are naturally wired for. In such a thing, you never get tired. In such a thing, you never get tired. There is always something new you're excitedly pushing after. And then stewardship, doing it for a better world. I have this caption by the on the side of my table. It said, I use my work to make lives better, not bitter. You too must begin to do the same. As I close, I like to say that every one of us is where we are today, not because of what the devil did, not because of what government is doing, not because of what anybody else has done, but because of the opportunities we have either engaged or neglected. Every opportunity that comes your way is an opportunity for you to step up. But whether you will actually step up, it's a function of your capacity to recognize that opportunity and to engage it. Your life is so much better and so much bigger than you. The work you do is so much bigger than the money you earn from it. Destinies are tied to that you're sowing, to that you're haymaking. So playing small is killing another person's business, another person's destiny. Thank you and God bless.